really not going to help. Close your eyes.
Why?
Suit yourself.
Try to find religion to see what I'd become. I was ruined by the world, but I blamed it on the sun.
Alright, I didn't think I would actually be doing this subject this early on, but the Lord has spoken otherwise. And obviously from the intro you see that, in the title line you see it, this one is on demons, the next one will be on demonology, and the third one will be on deliverance. It's yes, it's intense, but it needs to be said. So obviously, what are demons? Demons are disembodied, they are disembodied spirits that frantically, they are constantly wanting a body, and they are in torture until they do find a body to inhabit. But let me make one point clear though. True Christians, and Christians who are disciples of Christ and are going through that transformation to become more like Christ every day, are in that relationship with Christ, cannot be possessed. This will be gone over more in the demonology and deliverance messages, but I just want to make that point clear, period. They can be oppressed though, but they cannot be possessed, and the differences will again be gone over in the demonology and possibly the deliverance videos. There are two different origin stories when it comes to demons. One for sure is correct, and the other one I'm not sure about. I've seen loopholes in it, in my opinion, but the first one is obviously whenever Satan and his demons, or Satan and his angels, were kicked out of heaven. 1/3 of them were kicked out because they decided to follow Lucifer rather than God, and so they were kicked out. And so all those, and there are different rankings that will be gone over in demonology. There's too much on this specific video to go over that, to go over all three of subjects, in fact. So they were kicked out. And then the second one is the spirits of the dead Nephilim from Genesis 6. I will touch on that in the demonology because that subject has led me into many different realms while I've been studying it for the last couple of years. Now, how do they work though? Their main way of working is deception. Every single thing they do is a form of deception. In today's world, there is a mass deception. We are taught that there is either no such thing as a demon or anything like that, and I'm not talking about the ghost or paranormal type stuff. While some of it could be related to that, I have not gotten that far with it yet, so I have no comment on that at this time. I just want to put that out there, obviously. But again, this is the mass deception, or one of the mass deceptions that are out there. Churches don't speak on it, so there's no training, or most churches don't speak on it. There's a very few that do, very few that teach on it. And because of that, the majority of church goers, regardless whether you're a church goer or you're actually a disciple of Christ, many of us, most of us, fall into the deception and are defenseless against them because we have no clue on it, and because people think that they are a Christian, they cannot be hurt by demons. False, obviously. But I will, these next few videos will go over that, and I really pray that this will enlighten and bring deliverance, or enable you to bring deliverance to yourself. Another one is, one reason that churches don't speak on it is because since anything that people don't understand brings fear, and since most pastors don't even want to touch on it, automatically there's a fear in the pastor, and or the elders, leaders in the church, and obviously there's also the fear in the congregation, the church, since it's not brought up and people don't understand. So anything that people don't understand, they automatically fear. And right there, fear is another aspect of, just one of many when it comes to demonic spirits. They also hope that if they don't speak on it, this subject and problem will just go away. Well, knowing that it hasn't gone away for about 7,000 years, I would think that it's never going to go away. Alright, so before y'all jump on me, obviously there will be at one point in time where we no longer have to deal with demons, and that's whenever they're cast into the lake of fire by Jesus along with Satan. But talking this current time, before he returns, that the demon issue is never going to go away. Alright, so continuing on, obviously, again, there is no teaching, or very rarely there is a teaching in the church regarding anything regarding Satan or demons, period, and how to deal with them. But how do they work? Most of the time, and I'm not going into the extremes right now, I'm just going on the very general, scratching the surface thing of how they afflict us normally. They work by putting a thought into our mind, into our head, and since into the untrained person, we automatically believe that those thoughts are ours. And so that right there opens the door for them to start afflicting us even more. There are other ways, which I'll go over that in demonology. But for most people who don't touch on the extremes, or don't even, out of fear, don't even go near anything that appears like any kind of witchcraft or anything like that, most times demons put a little thought into our head, into the untrained person, they automatically believe it is theirs. But I am reminded of a story that Dan Moyer taught in a class of his, I think back in 2010, where he was standing, I think it was either in a hallway or someplace in his home, and he was talking to the Lord, and he said he was having a hard time grasping an idea, and an idea popped into his head, and he knew it was not of God, but he still was having a hard time. And again, I know the story for the most part. I could be wrong on some of the details, but at that point, at that time, whenever that thought popped into his head, the Lord allowed him and enabled him to see into the unseen realm, into the spiritual realm, and he saw a demon that was in his house. And right when he saw that, the Lord said to him, "See, it's outside your head, it's outside of you." And so that enabled him to understand that not all thoughts are his, and that's one of the reasons why I think it's Ephesians 6:12. Yeah, Ephesians 6:12, where it says, we don't fight against flesh and blood, and that goes along with that right there. Until we can grasp that idea, we're constantly going to be tripping up and messing up because we think that that's our thoughts. And once we fall for that, and continue to fall for that just begins a long road, long dark road of which we don't know how to combat if we're not trained. Now, because of this, because of the untrained, we don't receive the necessary training to be able to fight back, rather than constantly being defeated, which I'm sure many people can say is very it disappoints ourselves, but just kind of it brings us to a part where we feel defeated constantly. We can't go anywhere. We just feel bogged down constantly until we have that deliverance. Now, like I said before, Paul spoke on this in Ephesians 6:12, which says, for our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the powers, against the world forces of this darkness, because the spiritual forces of wickedness in the heavenly places. Obviously, we know this already. The demons and Satan work in the unseen realm, where very few people can actually see into on a regular basis. It's really difficult to explain how the unseen realm, the spiritual realm, works, and I'm still learning myself. I've probably barely scratched the surface of it. But I'm going to show you a video clip. This is of a former Satanist, high priest Satanist, turned Christian, and probably by simply mentioning that's even possible, probably just shook some people's theology and their beliefs. I hope this reveals to some of you how it works and how vital prayer is.
We had a book in New York, in America. I was the third person to get this book that has symbols of the book, of different demons, of different principalities, of different way of killing people through witchcraft. And this book was so, no one had a copy of this book. You couldn't have a copy of this book unless the devil signed off on it. And I was the third person that received that book. And I would take symbols from that book and do witchcraft to people and put people make people lose their mind. I put witchcraft on people, make people get diseases out of nowhere. I put witchcraft on people, make people get leprosy. I put witchcraft on people, make people get cancer. I mean, I did witchcraft to people. I gave people miscarriages. I gave people abortions. I put people in hospital for surgeries that didn't even have to go surgeries. I did witchcraft so people can lose their minds. I put spirits of bipolar, schizophrenia. I put spirits of disease on people. I put suicide spirits on people. I'd be up all night long praying and talking to the devil. When Christians can't even go to church for 1 hour. When Christians can't even pray for 1 hour. The spirit realm is more real than the natural realm. And we fail to see that. And whatever is not covered with Jesus Christ is an easy target to bring down. I remember a time that Nikki Cruz group came into my neighborhood, and it's called Truce. They would come and do drive-bys in my neighborhood. They would do like worship, and then they would preach a word and go to another corner and do the same thing. And I came after this group to try to bring them down, this group. And they were young kids. They were like 18, 17, 16, 20. I mean, so I said, how dare they play this junk, this filthy music in my neighborhood, what today we call worship. This filthy music in my neighborhood. I'm going to go after them. I'm going to destroy these kids. So when I went up to where they were at, there was a wall of fire around them. I couldn't penetrate and touch them. And there was something pushing me back. Every time I tried to throw demonic forces again, there was something that would just push me back. And I was able to touch these kids. My neighbor, they were terrified who I was. They said, if you mess with that guy, your family will die. If you mess with that guy, he don't need a gun. He'll kill your family in his sleep. My daddy was awesome. My daddy was, he knew, he gave me powers beyond I could imagine. He gave me powers that people had fear me. The police had fear me. The securities in my neighborhood had fear me. People that knew that I was the devil's, they would call me the devil's son. I brought Christians to their knees, not to prayer, because they had no power. It wasn't because your God wasn't all powerful. Don't get me wrong. Because your God was all powerful, the vessel was weak. The vessel had no prayer life. The prayer had no fasting life, and they had no relationship with God. There was a form of godliness in the person, but no power. The person was weak. The person had nothing going. He had a Bible, he had the right suit on, she had the right dress on, but there was no connection with Jesus Christ. Because you was out of his will, you was out of his promises, and you was out of his divine purpose. And I had you, I own you, I had you as a slave. I broke you, I put witchcraft on you. I kept doing that to Christian after Christian after Christian, after families, after churches. I chased everything down that represented the cross of Jesus Christ. I knew I would go to demon church, and every year we would have a meeting, a secret meeting. All the high witches and warlock would have this meeting to find out what principality we was going to usher out and bring in to run the region. We were more organized than the church itself. The kingdom of darkness was more organized than the Church of Jesus Christ. We knew how to do ceremonies. We knew how to do things before the year was over to prepare ourselves for the next year. When Christians couldn't go to church and pray for 1 hour. When Christians could go to church and have a consistent relationship with God. And that's the world I lived in. If you mess with the devil, he'll kill you, he'll kill your family. It was a fear that will grip you beyond measure, that you could not leave this religion. You could not leave Santeria, you could not leave Palamanyumbe, and you could not leave spiritualism. The doctors could not explain how I lost my eyesight. Meanwhile, Christians, and I was like, why Christians do bad, and Christians sometimes miss the mark, and the only thing that shows up in their house is grace and mercy. When you show up with the devil and you do something the devil don't like, he kills someone, he kill your family member. And I remember the devil warned this lady. She said, you can't be with that person no more. And she didn't care because she was in love with the person. The devil demon possessed a homeless guy in the street. He took a hammer, hit her 17 times over her head, and killed her.
As he became more powerful, John took warfare seriously.
The devil told me that I had to go into the neighborhood in the spirit realm in order to weaken it in the natural. Whatever you kill in the spirit realm, you can kill in the natural. So I will leave my body home. And I should project myself in different boroughs, different regions, different states, different countries. And as I fly to the neighborhood, I would speak curses into the neighborhood, speak things that I wanted to happen into the neighborhood. Sometimes I will go into neighborhoods and I see this group of people in the spirit in the corner praying, holding hands, heads bowed, praying up a storm. And there was no accomplishment in that neighborhood. That neighborhood was sanctified, blessed through prayer. You couldn't touch it. But the other neighborhoods, it was party time.
That clip was not to scare you, the purpose was to show you the reality of things and how much more real the spiritual realm is to our natural realm. It's difficult to really grasp. I'm still trying to grasp it myself, but I do understand that because I've experienced a few things myself. But like I said in one of the early videos, we are living in a type of matrix. But until we understand and learn how to live with the understanding of that this realm, this life is only temporary, then we can continue. But I mentioned before about different layers of heaven where, being kicked out of heaven, but the continuing question, I guess, and a confusing question is how can this happen if Satan and his demons were kicked out of heaven? There are 3 layers of heaven. The first layer is our earth. The second layer is, from like the beginning of space, from our atmosphere to a certain point in space, and then from that point on, which many people call deep space, is also called deep heaven. Obviously there's no way for us to get out there. So God's throne is in the 3rd heaven. I'm reminded of I think it's Revelation 4:1, when John was pulled from his spirit, or pulled from his body, and his spirit went to the 3rd heaven. And along with it, Paul spoke of a man, I think it's either 1 Corinthians or 2 Corinthians, I don't remember which one, but he was pulled. Actually, Paul said he didn't know if it was in his body or if it was in his spirit, but he was pulled to the third heaven. This is possible. When Satan was kicked out, he was kicked out of the third heaven, along with all his angels. So that means that he still has access to the first heaven and the second heaven, which explains the war in heaven. He still has access to the heavens. In Job 1:6-7, it says, "Now there was a day when the sons of God, the angels, came to present themselves before the Lord, and the adversary, Satan, Lucifer, devil, whatever you want to call him, also came among them. And the Lord said to the adversary, From where have you come? Then the adversary answered the Lord, saying, From roaming on the earth and walking up and down it." And it literally repeats the same thing in chapter 2, verses 1-2. We see Satan in this scripture assembling with the angels, and the Lord asks him where you've been at, and his response, roaming the earth. If he didn't have access to heaven, if Satan didn't have access to heaven, then how is he joining that assembly? Not to mention in Revelation 12, we see an obvious war being waged in heaven. Again, if Satan didn't have access to heaven, then how is he accessing the heavens to wage that war and to join that assembly? We know that when Satan was kicked out of heaven, he took 1/3 of the angels of heaven with him. And this is the main belief of the origin of demons when it comes to demonology. It's the main belief. The other part regarding Nephilim I will go over in the video for demonology, because there is a lot of different aspects and different parts of demonology. The next few videos that will be released over the next few weeks obviously will be Demonology and Deliverance. Demonology goes over the study, while Deliverance goes over the process of being delivered from any and all demonic forces. The subject is vital, not only to all Christians who have the active walk with Jesus and have that relationship with Jesus, but also with those who are not church, doesn't even know who Christ is, also known as the rest of the world. So it's vital for both areas. This is also the main reason why Jesus was sent to earth. I hope this first video brought a little bit of knowledge and enlightenment to you. I know the next few won't be complete until they're all finished, but regardless, I hope you enjoyed. I hope it didn't scare you. But comment, subscribe, whatever the Lord leads you to do. Until then, love you and God bless.